Praise Lathander the Morning Lord. From death, life, there is always another dawn. From the dawn, beauty reigns, and the way is clearer. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk about clerics today. I'm going to make a pretty bold statement here, but it's going to be very true. Clerics are the most generic class in the game, and I don't mean this to be that clerics are boring by any means. I mean that your table could be a party of 6 different clerics, and you wouldn't need any other classes to be a balanced party. Clerics can fulfill every role in the party, and we'll spend an episode or two talking about that in the near future, but today, we're going to build the kind of cleric that every party needs: a healer. A lot of the lesser talk about clerics, especially healers, makes them out to be these sort of uninteresting, one-dimensional heal bot type characters who do nothing but make sure that everyone else stays alive. In truth, however, healing clerics are way cooler than they're made out to be. They have a huge range of abilities, and they make one of the strong pillars of a party. Like the Bard video that we did before, we're going to use only the player's handbook and no other resources this time around. Let's do the building. First, we have to decide what kind of healer we're gonna be. Do we want to be the sort of frontline, shield-smashing, party-protecting healer? Do we want to be the skirt-the-battle-edge type that keeps the party at almost full health all the time? Well, I personally like the idea of the cleric who wades into battle with their allies and isn't afraid of taking a little bit of damage herself. So let's build a shield-bearer cleric. Clerics run with Wisdom and Charisma as their proficient saves, with their Wisdom as their spellcasting ability. So let's run some scores now with the standard scores array of 15, 14, 13, 12, 10, and 8. We'll put the highest of these, the 15, in Wisdom, and the 14 in Constitution. Let's put the 13 in Strength, the 12 in Intelligence, the 10 in Charisma, and the piddly 8 in Dexterity. We'll try to mitigate that 8 in a bit. The Charisma score of 10 won't be doing us any favors, and we'd need to raise it by 2 for it to start making a difference. But we can do something nice regarding that using magic later with something like Enhance Ability. Really though, this proficiency in Charisma implies that it's an important stat for clerics, but in 5th edition, it's really not. I mean, it used to be that Wisdom was for spells, and Charisma was for turning undead in previous editions, but since that's pretty much changed in 5th edition, we don't really need much in the way of Charisma. What we do need is Strength and Constitution. That's what'll keep you and your party alive best. Let's go in with choices for race now. We might want something that gives us more hardiness, or more wisdom for spellcasting and channeling divinity. What's nice about building a cleric in 5th edition is, opposed to how it was in 3rd edition, a cleric's wisdom is what governs both turning undead and casting spells. In 3rd edition, you had to have a high wisdom for spells and a high charisma for turning, so it was a very stat-heavy character. 5th edition, however, means that you really only have to focus on having a high wisdom to be an efficient cleric, and then build everything else the way that you want it to be. So hill dwarves get a pretty good set of bonuses, with +2 constitution and +1 wisdom. However, their short, stumpy legs prevent them from traveling at too high of a speed, and when you're rushing into, or perhaps out of, battle, an extra 5 feet could make all the difference. This is what I get for building a human from the beginning and not taking something that's got better nasal passages. There we go, now I won't sound like I'm talking through a loaf of bread. So wood elves have dexterity +2 and wisdom +1, which would kick both of those scores into their next step of modifier up. They also have a base speed of 35, which is great for getting to downed or injured allies quickly. And furthermore, their dark vision, their trance, and their fey ancestry abilities do a great deal to keep you able-bodied and vigilant for danger. This would be a really strong choice, perhaps the strongest if it weren't for humans. Now hear me out, I know that humans are generally considered this sort of very generic BS, oh I don't know what to be so I'll just be a human choice, but listen. The variant human gives us a possible +1 to 2 different scores, say wisdom and strength, because increasing the scores with odd numbers bumps that score's modifier up into the next step up, so it's much more efficient to increase your odd numbered scores first. Plus a skill and a feat. Use this feat to take Shield Master, which gives you some crazy bonuses in regards to using shields more effectively. It would help you to protect yourself as you protect your allies. So it allows you to add shield bonuses to dexterity saving throws, to shove enemies with the shield when you make an attack, and it gives a sort of weakened version of the rogue's evasion ability that allows you to take 0 damage from a successful dex save on various things so long as you have your shield. Normally, if you make a successful dexterity save on, for instance, a fireball spell, you would take half damage from it, but with Shield Master, you would take 0 damage so long as you have your shield out. For a shield bearer cleric, this seems like pretty good idea to have at level 1. We're gonna take this one. For the skill, let's take Perception. It's a common skill that's always good to have even when you don't think you'll need to invest in it. You get it for free, so why not? It's never a bad idea to be able to notice hidden things. Guaranteed your party will need you to use it at some point. You also get Common and 1 extra language when you choose Human, so check with your DM for what language might be most appropriate when you're choosing. You can, of course, have your backstory give you some kind of exotic language choice like Sylvan or the like, but it's just as likely that you'd know something practical like Elven or Orc. The humans' move speed is 30 feet and their size is medium, so they're just slightly slower than the Wood Elf, but slightly faster than the Dwarf. So now that we've got our scores and our race down, let's take a look at a background. As a priest, you're going to get access to a smaller number of skills than some of the other characters like bards or rogues. The cleric's skill list is history, insight, medicine, persuasion, and religion, from which you can choose 2. You'll also end up with proficiency in heavy armor and simple weapons. Let's keep that in mind. I'll explain why later, but keep that in mind. So the background that's most obvious and therefore least applicable would be Acolyte, a follower of a faith that gets insight and religion, 2 extra languages, and a holy symbol. Of course, insight and religion are already part of the cleric list, and clerics get a holy symbol for free as well, so you'd kind of be doubling up on these things. The biggest thing that acolytes get is that temples of their religion will give them free stuff, free food, free healing whenever they go to those places. But while that is pretty sweet, a cleric should be able to convince a church of their own god pretty easily to do exactly that same thing without having to have this extra little perk. Being a cleric already makes a lot of this background redundant. It would be great if you were a fighter or a druid or something like that, but for a cleric already, it's kind of largely irrelevant. But a shield bearer like yourself might make good use of the soldier background, which gives you athletics and intimidation, plus proficiency with a gaming set and land vehicles. It also gives you the feature military rank, which would make sense for someone who wades into battle with their comrades and heals them with fervor. It gives you the ability to requisition horses and supplies and weapons and things, access to military camps and militia stuff, and influence above for members of the military that are a lower rank than you. It sounds like a pretty sweet deal. I mean, they get a couple trinkets and things as well, like the insignia that says, yes, I was military. Why don't we take soldier as our background? So, we've got the background and the race. Let's get priesty. It's cleric time. Of course, as a cleric, you need to choose a deity that you follow. The player's handbook has a bunch of suggestions for gods that work in your favor, and since we know that we're going to go life domain, you can choose one that fits your bill there. If it's story significant, you can check with your DM to see what kind of gods would make sense for Mr. Cleric Pants here. Look at things like Lathander, the Morning Lord, or Pelor, the god of the sun. Anybody that seems like you would have a sort of hand in the life forces of its followers. Let's look at the skills that you get next. We know that we get athletics and intimidation from being a soldier, and we know that as a healing cleric, we're going to need medicine and religion from our cleric list to be the most effective. Medicine allows you to do things like set bones that are broken, figure out things regarding poisons, and just generally be useful in healing even without using magic. It allows you to use a healer's kit to stabilize somebody while they're dying, for instance, which is pretty nice. And religion is a big thing for priests because their knowledge base is all about their god and other god-adjacent religious figures. So a lot of knowledge regarding, for instance, the undead, matters of the soul, cults, and that kind of thing are a religion check. As a cleric, your hit die is a d8, and you get the maximum of that for your first level. That means that at level 1, your HP will be 8, plus your constitution modifier of +2 for a total of 10 HP. Pretty okay for a level 1 character, if you ask me. I mean, it's a bit low, but we can mitigate this with cleric abilities, armor, and magic. You are also proficient with Wisdom and Charisma saving throws, like I mentioned before, so let's mark those on your sheet as well. While you won't get it yet at level 1, it's important to remember that the Cleric's main thing is Channel Divinity. For a priest, this is the ability to sort of tap directly into the power of the domain from which you draw the power of your god. And all clerics, regardless of domain or faith, get the ability to use their Channel Divinity once per long or short rest. At level 2, of course. They also get the ability Channel Divinity Turn Undead as well, which is a classic staple of clerics. Using this ability, you can present your holy symbol and utter like a prayer or oath to your deity, and then any undead within 30 feet of you must succeed on a wisdom saving throw against your cleric's spell save DC, or become turned. A turned undead basically has to flee from you at all costs for 1 minute or until they take damage. They can't willingly come within 30 feet of you, they have to use their action to dash away from you, and if they can't move further away, then they sort of just cower and dodge around and don't attack or anything. It's a pretty sweet ability, especially since it theoretically works on any undead. In previous editions, you had to roll to see how many hit dice of undead you could affect, but in this edition, even the mighty Strahd von Zarovich from the Curse of Strahd campaign, the big boss, who is a vampire, could theoretically fall victim to your turn undead if he rolled poorly enough. As a cleric, you get to cast divine spells. So unlike the sorcerer or the bard, for instance, clerics get access to every spell on their class's list right off the bat. During each long rest, you can choose a number of spells from the list that you have access to, equal to your spellcasting modifier plus your cleric level. So in your case, right now, you could prepare 4 spells per long rest. That's level 1 cleric plus 3 of your wisdom modifier. We'll talk about good spell choices in a little bit. Your spell save DC is the number against which other creatures have to roll saving throws to try to resist your spells. Base-wise, it's 8 plus your wisdom modifier of 3 plus your proficiency bonus of 2 to make a 13. It's a little low for sure, yes, but we'll be kicking that up as soon as we can. In the same vein, your spell attack modifier is the thing that you add to your d20 roll to see if you can successfully aim and hit an opponent with an attack spell. It's wisdom plus proficiency, which right now totals plus 5. You can also use your holy symbol as a spellcasting focus for all of your spells. This means that any spell that has some kind of material component listed that specifically does not have a gold piece cost next to it can be cast using the holy symbol instead of those components. So you don't need to keep pinches of graveyard dust and little bottles of goat's blood if you have your holy symbol. A cleric draws their power from one specific aspect of their deity at a time. Dionysus, for instance, is the Greek god of partying, sure, but he's also the god of fertility, vineyards, and music. You can't be a cleric of all of those things, so you have to choose just one aspect. In 5th edition, the domains a cleric can choose from are Knowledge, Life, Light, Nature, Tempest, Trickery, or War. Since we're going to go full healing and support, we're going to take the Life domain, but let's look quickly at some of the other domains so that you know what you could be missing. The Nature domain touches on kind of the same territory as the Druids do. Your deity is one of the forest of nature, so maybe the god like Obad Hai might be one of yours. You gain access to the Channel Divinity ability called Charm Animals and Plants, where you can present your holy symbol and demand that plants and animals within 30 feet of you decide that you're a cool dude. They get charmed for 1 minute on a failed wisdom save. So it's essentially a modified version of your Turn Undead ability, just for plants and animals. The Tempest Domain, which I personally think is the raddest domain, has a Channel Divinity that automatically maximizes any damage done using lightning or thunder, so if you really want to wreck a guy, you can just fry them to oblivion. The Knowledge Domain steps kind of towards the wizard and bard in the pursuit of its knowledge and information. Its Channel Divinity ability allows the user to become proficient with any one skill or tool for 10 minutes. So you need something fixed, written, built, read, destroyed, the cleric of the Knowledge Domain can do it for you with their deity's help. You, however, are going to choose the Life Domain. At level 1, you become proficient with heavy armor. Remember I said that we were going to get to that? So, normally you aren't proficient with heavy armor as a cleric, you're only proficient with up to medium armor, but with the Life Domain, you're proficient with heavy armor. This will be super helpful in keeping you from being hit by your opponents. After all, plate mail is pretty slim pickings in terms of weaknesses in this game. You also have potent healing spells with the Disciple of Life feature. Each spell that you use that regains HP for a creature makes that creature regain an extra amount, equal to 2 plus the spell's level. So you get some free heals in with no extra effort. You get that at level 1. So every healing spell that you do is just, slightly better. You get your Domain Channel Divinity ability at level 2, but it's super cool. It's an immediate area of effect healing burst that gives you a pool of HP equal to 5 times your cleric level to sort of divide up between the people in your party. It's pretty sweet because it scales with your level and you get more uses of Channel Divinity per rest as you level up. Again, you still don't get this one till level 2, but each domain has an expanded spell list, and with your Life Domain Cleric, your spell list is expanded as well. At level 1, you gain access to the level 1 spells Bless and Cure Wounds, which are always prepared for you and don't count against the number of other spells that you can prepare, so they're free for preparing, which is awesome. This means that you literally are never without a party buff and a healing spell, which is just great. You get to choose 3 cantrips, which will be the bread and butter of your spellcasting since they don't really take spell slots to cast. Your spell list is no laughing matter either. Even a healing cleric can get some pretty nasty spells to use on enemies and some insane buffs and heals. It's pretty much a guarantee that every spellcasting class is going to want a damage-dealing cantrip at level 1, so that anytime they're technically armed with the very least that spell. The cleric damaging cantrip is Sacred Flame, a sort of range spell that forces an opponent to make a dexterity save against your spellcasting DC of 13, as we discussed before, or else take 1d8 radiant damage. What's nice about this cantrip is that normally if a target is behind cover of some sort, they get advantages on their saving throws, but since this spell is literally holy fire, it sort of just ignores any advantage that cover might provide. 2 more cantrips for a shield-bearing healer will need to try to either protect themselves or support their allies, rather than affecting the enemy too much. So a spell like Guidance allows you to buff a party member, including yourself, just by sort of, tapping them on the shoulder or just touching them, to give them an extra 1d4 to add to an ability check. Remember that all skills are technically ability checks as well. This means that if you see someone that's going to try to do a thing that you expect will require a check, it costs you nothing to tap them on the shoulder and give them a little encouragement, a little extra boost. That leaves 1 more cantrip, and the choices that we have are pretty okay. As a human, you have no dark vision, so a spell like Light would help to alleviate that weakness. It gives you bright light in a 30-foot radius and dim light in an extra 30-foot radius outside of that. Mending, of course, is a great utility spell that fixes damages to tiny items like a torn piece of armor or a broken lock in which your rogue's gotten his lockpick stuck because he has no self-control. Ugh, rogues, am I right? Thaumaturgy is the divine spellcasting version of Prestidigitation, which is essentially a very, very limited wish spell. Spare the Dying allows you to just sort of touch a dying creature and stabilize it immediately so that it doesn't need to make any more death saves. However, the best of the bunch for a level 1 healing type cleric is the spell Resistance. Much like the Guidance spell, Resistance is a sort of preventative measure that allows the person you touch, including yourself, to add an extra d4 to any saving throw that they make. This is a great thing to add when you know what you're going up against in the next fight, and you want to make sure that you've got the edge on avoiding its stupid AoE attacks or shrugging off mind-affecting powers or whatever other BS your GM is throwing at you. That little edge could mean all the difference between a mind flayer eating your brain and going home hungry. Now, let's talk level 1 spells. Unlike the sorcerer and similar spellcasters, clerics prepare their spells from a list daily, like we mentioned. Flavor-wise, they sort of have to spend some time during their long rest praying and replenishing their divine energy and, talking to their god and getting it back from them. But mechanically, they choose a number of spells from the cleric's spell list equal to their wisdom modifier plus their cleric level, and those are the spells to which they have access that day. Remember that you always have your domain spells prepared as well, and they don't count against this number. And you can change that list at any time that you do a long rest. So let's look into some of the really good spells that clerics get at level 1 that you may want to consider using pretty often. Domain-wise, we've always got Bless and Cure Wounds at level 1. Bless is a great area of effect multiple target buff for the party that takes your spells, like Resistance and Guidance, just a step further. While under the effects of this spell, the buffed targets can add a d4 to every attack roll or saving throw that they make, not just once. And at level 1, you can target 3 people with it, but if you cast it at higher levels, you can target even more than that. It is a concentration spell, which is a little bit annoying, so be careful not to accidentally cast another concentration spell and lose this benefit until you really want to. Cure Wounds, of course, is the meat and potatoes of the healer, granting a creature you touch hit point recovery to the tune of 1d8 plus your spellcasting modifier HP, with the number of dice you roll increasing if you cast it at a higher level. This is your pretty much go-to action during your turn. You don't know what to do? Just drop some healing on a nearby party member. They'll probably appreciate it. You will find, however, that Cure Wounds is a great spell if you can physically reach that person and touch them. For other instances where you need ranged healing, you can use the first level spell Healing Word. It's a lower dice value at 1d4 plus your wisdom modifier, but it is ranged up to 60 feet so long as you can see the target, and this spell's only a bonus action to use, so you could wade into the fight, punch a guy in the face, and yell at an ally to get back up all in the same turn. A brilliant damage dealing spell, no pun intended, is Guiding Bolt. It's sort of a ranged spell attack that does 4d6 radiant damage to the target, and gives anyone who attacks it before the end of your next turn advantage on the attacks they make because of the light that is now radiating from the target that you hit. This is a great way to get the attention of a baddie who's going after a friend, and then let the rest of your friends wail on it. Sanctuary is a spell that isn't concentration, which alone makes it a great spell, but it also makes the target of the spell less likely to be attacked. For the 1 minute that this spell lasts, each creature that makes an attack roll or harmful spell against the ally that you ward has to make a wisdom save or else choose a different target for their spell because they're compelled not to attack the one who's in the sanctuary. So long as your ally doesn't attack or cast an offensive spell, this spell continues. And guess what the other thing is about this spell that is super great? It is a bonus action, just like Healing Word. So you can wade into a thing, punch a dude in the face, and then convince everyone else that you probably shouldn't attack the halfling. You're definitely going to want the spell Shield of Faith. Under its effect, the target gains a +2 bonus to its armor class, which, how cool is that already? It's super good when you need to extract an ally, or when your barbarian is roaring and ready to go in headlong towards the fight. Any bonus to armor class is insanely good, and this is a simple way to get such a bonus. Furthermore, and this seems to be a theme here with these first level cleric spells, this is a bonus action spell. It's so good. Your protection-based nature may also catch on the spell Protection from Good and Evil, which is a fancy buff that basically makes a bunch of creature types really bad at harming a target. Especially good if you're fighting undead, as they are one of the creature types that this spell guards against. You essentially force any creatures from this short list to have disadvantage on attack rolls against your target, and your target can't be charmed, frightened, or possessed by those things on that list. This spell was basically born to be screwing with vampires. Now, of course, you've got several other choices, but if it were me, I'd choose to have the first 4 of these 5 spells on hand until you gain access to some better ones. This kit is really great for lower levels and will really keep your party on the winning side for quite a long time if you ask me. So you get some choices for your starting equipment. From your soldier background you get a trinket, a gaming set, some kind of mark to signify your military rank, some clothes, and 10 gold pieces. Your cleric class allows you to add another bunch of choices, so let's do that next. You get a choice between a warhammer and a mace, but because of the way that you're built right now, you're not proficient with the warhammer, so let's take the mace. It's a hefty bit of damage at 1d6 bludgeoning, and you can upgrade it for something better later. Since you've got proficiency in heavy armor, take the chainmail. It sets your base AC to 16, and that doesn't factor in your low dexterity score at all. So even though you've got a -1 on it, it doesn't come into play for your dexterity. Your armor class is 16 until you find a better way to make it higher. This is super nice even if the armor is pretty loud, which it imposes disadvantage on stealth checks while you're wearing it. But who needs to be quiet when you exist to protect allies and smash faces? In a choice between a simple weapon or another light crossbow, you should take the light crossbow. Yes, you do have your ranged Sacred Flame attack cantrip, but it's never a bad idea to have some physical damage ready at any time. The range is quite good on the crossbow, and it does some decent damage. Take the Explorer's Kit. The Priest Kit has like an alms box and some priestly vestments, but in the long run, your rations and 50 feet of rope will be much more useful than a block of incense. You also get a shield and a holy symbol. Shields are great for you who have the Shield Master feat, and they add +2 to your armor class, which feeds into the abilities given to you by that feat as well. Your AC is now a hefty difficult to penetrate 18 at level 1. That's insane. Pretty much nothing is going to hit you for quite a long time. So let's finish filling out all the other numbers on the sheet. Initiative is -1 from your dexterity modifier, but it's actually good sometimes to go later in the combat, especially if you're a healer, because you'll be able to more accurately assess who needs your help and how they need it. Your passive perception is going to be 10 plus your wisdom score of 13 if your DM uses passive perception. Each of your saves and skills will have a value in them, with the ones with which you are proficient adding a +2 to your bonus with them, since your proficiency modifier is going to be +2 until you're level like 5 or something. At level 1, you have 2 level 1 spell slots. Use them wisely because they only come back on a long rest. Now you are ready to go out and defend the weak, heal the sick, and beat the ever-living tar out of some enemies in the name of your deity. Wield your holy symbol high and show those bad guys who's boss. But how do you progress in this path? Well, let's look at some of the stuff that you get for the next few levels and what choices you should think about making in order to be the most steadfast shield bearer possible. Level 2 gets you that delicious channel divinity set of abilities that we talked about before once per long or short rest. That means that if you take your 10-minute or 15-minute or however long your GM sets it break, you get all of the uses of this thing back. That's the Turn Undead feature plus your Preserve Life ability that gives you your AoE healing burst. At level 2, your Preserve Life gives you a pool of 10 HP to spread about, which is pretty good. However, this scales linearly with your Cleric level, so it only gets better from there. Note that your Channel Divinity healing does not get benefited by the Disciple of Life extra recovery, because technically it isn't a spell. You get 1 more first level spell slot per day and can prepare 1 extra spell now that you've got the level for it. I highly recommend that you prepare Detect Good and Evil as a useful spell for when you're going out to dungeons, because it allows you to get a better sense of what things are around you and what kind of stuff you're dealing with. It has a range of 30 feet around you, and it is a concentration spell that lasts for 10 minutes, so make use of it if you see fit. Each level, you add some new HP to your total, so your Constitution bonus plus 1 of your hit dice is the thing that you add to it. Clerics get a D8 for their hit dice, so you'll be adding 1d8 plus 2 to your maximum HP. Here, I'm just going to use the standard value of 5 on a D8 and add the con bonus for 7 more HP. At level 3, you kind of don't gain any new features, but you do gain access to second level spells, so your arsenal just grew by a massively huge amount. You get 2 second level spell slots and an additional first level spell slot, and you can prepare 1 more spell now. So second level spells to look into are things like Enhance Ability, which adds a temporary bonus to an ability score, which is insane. Prayer of Healing, which is another sort of 30-foot AoE heal that gets up to 6 people for 2d8 plus your wisdom modifier of 3 each. Be careful though, because Prayer of Healing is a 10-minute cast time, so it's sort of like a recover after a fight, get everyone back to their feet, or just before you go into the big bad and you've got a couple minutes to spare kind of heal. You can also, if you're really brave, start taking Warding Bond, which basically affixes a creature's life force to you. They get resistance to all damage and +1 AC in saves, but any damage that they take, you also take. So they'll be taking, say, 20 damage from a longsword, that since they're resistant to it gets reduced by 10, and then you take that same amount, 10. So you're just taking half of whatever damage they would normally take for them. If you want to throw someone into a fight but can't get into that fight yourself, this is a great way to effectively double their HP before they go in. It's a great spell to take if you're playing the sort of character of a shield bearer and really getting into it as well. It would make a lot of sense to have something like this. In addition, you now have access to your 3rd level domain spells. That's going to be the 2nd level spells Lesser Restoration, which is amazing for fixing diseases and status effects, and Spiritual Weapon, which materializes a weapon from thin air made out of divine holy power that you can command to go around and hit stuff. These are always prepared for you and don't count against your number of spells, just like before. Also, don't forget that every long rest you take, regardless of what level you are, you can re-choose your spells that you have prepared from your cleric spell list. If you find that some spells just kind of aren't doing you any good, switch them for something that'll do you better. Also, just because you only have 2 2nd level spell slots doesn't mean you can't prepare more than 2 2nd level spells. You just probably won't be able to cast all of them. Roll up that delicious extra HP. We're going to add another 7 to it here, just like before. Level 4 gets you either an ability score improvement or a feat, your choice between the two. It also gets you another 2nd level spell slot and the ability to prepare 1 more level spell. I recommend that you take Aid with you when you can. It gives 3 of your party members 5 temporary hit points and doesn't require concentration, which is brilliant. So you can sort of bolster up your party before heading into a big fight or something like that by casting it once or possibly multiple times on different members of your party. Temporary HP doesn't stack though, so if they have temporary HP from something else, they will not add 5 more to it. They have to choose between the 5 that you're giving them and whatever other temporary HP they might have at the time. You also get another cantrip to use, which is decent, I suppose. The remaining cantrips on this list are perhaps slightly less than stellar. The most utility type would be to take Light on account of your being a human and therefore Night Blind. Spare the Dying is great if you really need to stabilize someone, but you can't be arsed to use a spell slot, so maybe that's a good choice. Mending and Thaumaturgy are basically story spells, great to have for character development and sort of convenience of plot and roleplay, but largely ineffective for very much else. So I think, going with the theme that we've got, why don't we take Spare the Dying? Now, the ability score improvement that I mentioned a second ago is really nice. It gives you 2 points that you can put into 1 or 2 different abilities. At present, you have no odd-numbered ability scores, so splitting these 2 points between 2 scores would be kind of a waste and impractical to say the least. If you are going to increase a score, you'd likely choose either Dexterity to get rid of your negative modifier, Constitution to give you some extra hit points and make you a hardier and sturdier target, or Wisdom to make all of your cleric abilities just a bit stronger. So let's take a look at a few of the feats that might do you some good instead of the ability additions, and see if they're worth not raising a score. The feat Charger gives you a bonus to damage or the ability to push a creature 10 feet in a straight line so long as you have 10 feet of movement beforehand, which seems mighty nice for someone who'd be wanting to get an enemy off a weaker ally, for instance. But you can already shove someone with your shield when you make an attack on them, so maybe the Charger feat isn't going to do you very good. You could take the Durable feat, which increases your Constitution by 1 and makes it such that whenever you roll a hit die to regain hit points, the lowest possible amount you can regain is twice your Constitution modifier, which would be a 4 on those dice. The Durable feat almost seems like a waste for you. Now, the Healer feat allows you to use the Healer's Kit to restore hit points to a creature when normally you can't really restore HP with it. They'd regain HP equal to 1d6 plus 4 plus their character level if you use the kit on them. This is great for if you have a few minutes between fights and need to do heals but don't want to waste spell slots on it. But be warned, a creature who has been healed with the healing kit cannot be healed in the same way again until they finish a short or long rest. This is a good contender, so we'll keep this on the top of the list. If you're the type to be knuckles deep in the fray with your allies, then you might take the Heavy Armor Master feat. This one's actually really good. It increases your strength by 1, which is fine, I guess, but its really good bit is that it reduces all non-magical bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage you take while wearing heavy armor by 3. Effectively, you could wade into a group of kobolds and spin around a few times with your mace, take no damage from their puny attacks, and walk back out with no more kobolds. This is also a high contender because it's imperative that the healer stays alive so that they can keep healing people. Reducing damage done to them is great. So the toss-up really is between Heavy Armor Master to keep yourself up and available to the group, and Healer to make sure that the group is sufficiently cared for. I think we'll take Healer this time, but at level 8 I'd seriously reconsider taking Heavy Armor Master at that time. From this point onward, you'll have a much better idea what kind of cleric your group needs. I won't give you any more sort of specific leveling instructions, but here are a few things that you should consider and watch out for as you go. The higher your level, the more disruption you can play against the undead. Level 5 gives you the ability to sort of vaporize them instead of turning them, if their challenge rating is a certain level or lower. This means that you can walk into the middle of a mass of skeletons or zombies, and hold up your symbol and turn undead, and if the horde does exceptionally poorly on its saves, you can wipe the whole band of them clean. Make use of your turn undead as much as you can, because it is crazy good. Level 10 gets you your class ability Divine Intervention, which allows you to literally commune with your deity and ask them for specific assistance in a situation, if you can get their attention for a second, by rolling equal to or lower than your cleric's level on a d%. As soon as you get it, this means that you have a 10% chance of catching your god's attention, and this can be super devastating in moments of great need. If it works, you can't use it again for a week because your god is sick of dealing with you, but if it doesn't succeed, you have to only wait for a long rest before you can try again. At level 20, it automatically succeeds, so if you end up playing an epic level paladin, you've pretty much got one free deity-powered wish spell once a week. Your life domain gives you a bunch of cool stuff, not the least of which is the ability to heal yourself when you heal others, using your 6th level ability, Blessed Healer. Whenever you cast a healing spell that restores HP to someone else, you regain 2 HP plus an additional amount equal to the spell's level. It's a pretty sweet deal. It's kind of like the self version of the other people, like, heal buff ability that you already have from being a life cleric. As a tank cleric, though, you'll really like the Divine Strike feature, which adds an additional 1d8 radiant damage to one attack that you make on each of your turns. That's the important bit. It happens on each of your turns if you choose to use it. You'll probably be really used to being in the middle of the fray by then, so getting that extra damage boost on your weapons will really improve your non-healing contributions. Of course, at level 17, you automatically heal for the maximum amount possible on any healing spell you cast. It's a pretty straightforward thing there, and it's kind of expected for healing clerics. In terms of spells that you should keep an eye on, ones that will do you good are ones such as Beacon of Hope, which is an AoE buff that makes your allies have advantage on wisdom saves, and also, this is the important bit, they heal the maximum amount from any heals cast on them. This is essentially temporary limited access to your level 17 domain ability at a way lower level. Magic Circle is great for keeping a big guy in one place while you interrogate him or bind him somehow. Mass Healing Word is a version of Healing Word that works en masse, of course, so it's a great AoE ranged heal. Your first resurrection type spell would be Revivify, which brings a creature back to life from the dead so long as it's been dead no longer than 1 minute. Death Ward gives the target of the spell the half-orc ability to avoid death when they would normally be sent to 0 or fewer HP, which would bring them to 1 HP instead. It would be great to use in a fist fight between, say, a Goliath and a half-orc in a fist-fighting pit, so long as the rules of the fight would allow it. I'm looking at you, Grog. Commune allows you to ask your deity some specific questions and get answers directly from that deity. So in an instance where you're looking for some information but really don't have time to talk to real people or use a library, you can instead just ask your god. Greater Restoration can fix pretty much any living ailment that Lesser Restoration can't, so it's super good to have as a healing cleric. Your next tier up from Revivify resurrection spell is Raise Dead, which gives you a sort of 10-day window to use it, providing that you have the body intact, missing no vital pieces. You also get Mass Cure Wounds, which levels up your normal cure wounds by making it area of effect. Do I see another pattern here? Heal is a pretty straightforward uber-level heal that restores a flat 70 HP, which is to say that it's 10 HP per spell level, and cures all diseases and blindness and deafness from your target. Resurrection and Regenerate are both really important pieces of your arsenal, because one of them, Regeneration, will grow back limbs and missing organs on a living being in 2 minutes, and the other is the next tier up of Bringing Back to Life spell, which will bring back a body that's dead for up to 100 years, back to life at full health with all missing parts restored. The highest possible level of raising dead is the spell True Resurrection, for which you don't need a body. They can be dead for up to 2 centuries, and they can have died of literally any reason other than old age. You can literally just speak the name of the dead, and they will appear before you, healed and restored fully. Overpowered. So once you get to level 20, it'll be your job to make sure that, short of a god's direct intervention, nobody on your team dies. And even if there's a deific intervention, you can just call yours in to intervene on the intervention. You are the pinnacle of protection, the hero of heals, the Pulitzer Prize winner of prayers to your deity. You'll be an invaluable asset to your party from the very beginning, starting at level 1, and if you ever disappear, your party will hurt without you. But don't betray that trust, though. You have to do your job, because it's your duty, according to Lathander or Elonar, whomever you choose as your deity. Now, go forth, hero, and keep all those Leroy Jenkinses of the world alive. This was a little bit longer than the Bard's video, but I hope you enjoyed building Shieldy McHealbot here. In the future, I want to explore some crazy options for clerics, maybe even do a video on how to make an entire party out of just clerics. Now that Xanathar's Guide to Everything is out, we'll definitely be looking into some of that to bolster our spell lists and abilities and domains the next time we hit the cleric shelf. The next video will take a look at tieflings and how to build some cool characters using them as your base. Tieflings are super rad, so look forward to talking about those infernal plain-touched that just want to be loved, or feared, or both, soon. Which character archetype would you like me to look at after that? Come tell me in the Discord channel, where there's a special sub-channel specifically for this kind of suggestion. If you like this discussion and appreciate the in-depth look at character building, you can support me by dropping on over to my Patreon link down in the description box and making a donation there. You'll also, by the way, find the character sheets for Prieston von Priestenstein on the Patreon as well, but you don't need to donate to get your hands on them. They'll be a free post. Thank you very much, my dear friends, and happy rolling.